Good day, sir. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge your subject, Anatomy and Physiology Lab. Thank you for requiring us an activity like this, as this will help us to know more about the heart, the blood vessels, and as well as the blood circulation. And the main objective of this activity is that we are going to locate the different parts of the heart, and we are going to use a pig heart since it is very similar to the human heart in structure, in size, and even the functions of it. Now, the materials needed for this activity is the dissecting pan, the dissecting kit, a pig's heart, a gloves, a lab apron or lab gown, the face shield, and of course the mask. And for our first procedure is that we are going to examine the external structure of the heart. Now, let's begin this activity. This is the pig heart in a closer look. And our first step is we are going to locate the left side and also the right side of the heart. Now I am going to use a stick to easily identify what is the left and right. Now if this is my right hand and this is my left, and if we are facing the heart, this side will be the right side of the heart, and this side will be the left. At the top of it, this will be our superior, and at the bottom, this is our inferior. Located at the bottom of the heart is the apex, and this will be our reference to help us determine the top and bottom of the heart. Now let us examine the external structure of the heart. Again, this is the front or ventral side of the heart. The location of the thin membrane or pericardium that still covers the heart, it is here. The pericardium or the pericardial sac is a double-layered closed sac that surrounds the heart and anchors it. Located below the pericardium is the muscle of your heart called the myocardium, and it is inside. Most of the myocardium is located in the lower two chambers of the heart, which is the left and right ventricle. The tip of the heart or the apex is here. Now, only the left ventricle extends all the way to your apex. And since we already know the left and the right side of the heart, we can identify the location of the four chambers of the heart. Let us move it a bit to the right side. Now, this part is the right atrium, the upper chamber to your left. And this is the size of your actual atrium. Compared to the other chambers, it is smaller than the others. Okay, now how about the right ventricle? Okay, this part is the right ventricle. I repeat, this part is the right ventricle. And on the other side, we have the left part. This part is the left atrium, the upper chamber to your right. Okay, if this is the back side of the heart, this is our left atrium. Next, how about the ventricle? This big part or the big portion of the muscle here is the left ventricle, located at the lower chamber to your right. Now, compared to the right ventricle, this is bigger because this chamber will supply the oxygenated blood throughout the body, so it needs to be muscular than the right ventricle. Again, those are the four chambers of the heart. And while the heart is still in this position in the dissecting pan, let us locate the blood vessels at the broad end of the heart. First would be the coronary artery. This is the coronary artery, this part, and it helps to supply fresh blood with oxygen and nutrients to the heart muscle itself. Now, let us look for the pulmonary artery. Our pulmonary artery would be this one. And this blood vessel branches and carries blood to the lungs to receive oxygen and can be found curving out to the right ventricle or the upper chamber to your left. Next, Let us locate the major vessel. This part is called the aorta, and this major vessel is located near the right atria and just behind the pulmonary arteries to the lungs. Now, let us locate the curved part of this vessel known as the aortic arc. Okay, this part is the aortic arc. Moving on, let us locate the pulmonary veins. Our pulmonary veins are here. These are our pulmonary veins, and these vessels return oxygenated blood from the right and left lungs to the left atrium. As you can see, these are connected to the atrium, while our pulmonary artery is connected to the right ventricle. Now, let us locate the inferior and superior vena cava. We cannot see it literally, but there is a tube here of the inferior and superior vena cava, and these two blood vessels are located on the left of the heart and connect to the right atrium. The oxygenated blood enters the body through these vessels into the right receiving chamber. Okay, let us try to fill down into the right atrium. These vessels do not contain valves to control the blood flow. Again, these are the blood vessels of the heart, and this is your vena cava, your aorta, the pulmonary artery which is connected to the right ventricle, and the pulmonary veins. Next procedure is that we are going to examine the internal anatomy of the pig heart. Let us use scissors to cut through the side of the pulmonary artery. I apologize if my scissors are very blunt, but it's almost there. There you go. So this is the cut. And we are going to continue cutting down into the wall of the right ventricle. I'm just gonna use my blade. Let us remember to be careful to just cut deep enough to go through the wall of the heart chamber. The cutting line should be above and parallel to the groove of the coronary artery. Finally, now that we are done, we are now able to examine the internal anatomy of the heart. And if there is dried blood, let us rinse it out first out of the heart. Now let's locate the right atrium. This is your right atrium, right? Now we're gonna use a stick to locate it. There you go. That is your right atrium. And let's notice the thinner muscular wall of this receiving chamber. Next is the inferior and superior vena cava, which is located here. It enters this chamber and notice the lack of the valves. Now, the valve between the right atrium and the right ventricle is called the tricuspid valve. And this valve, called as the tricuspid valve, allows blood flow from the right atrium, this is our right atrium, into the right ventricle during diastole, period when the heart is relaxed. And when the heart begins to contract, systole phase, ventricular pressure increases until it is greater than the pressure in the atrium, causing the tricuspid to snap closed. Now I'm gonna use my fingers to feel the thickness of the right ventricle. This is the right ventricle, and I can feel that it is thin and its lining is smooth. Also, we can see the network of irregular muscular cords that connects the tricuspid valve into the papillary muscle, and these are called as the chordae tendineae. And we can also see a septum on the right side of the right ventricle, and this thick muscular wall separates the right and left pumping ventricles from each other. Inside the right ventricle, we can locate the pulmonary artery that carries blood away from the chamber. This is the pulmonary artery, and it has a one-way valve called pulmonary semilunar valve that controls the blood flow away from the right ventricle at the entrance to this blood vessel. Okay, let's move on. Let's move it a bit. So this is the left atrium, and using a scissor again, let us continue to cut open the heart. Let us start a cut on the outside of the left atrium downward into the left ventricle, cutting toward the apex to the septum at the center groove. And again, let us clean the heart with water. We have here the left superior chamber, known as the left atrium, and it is where the pulmonary veins enters. Let's observe the one-way or semilunar valves at the entrance to these veins. Inside this chamber, the valve that controls blood flow between the upper left atrium and the lower left ventricle is called as the bicuspid or the mitral valve, and it is this. This valve consists of two leaflets, and blood flows from the left atrium into the left ventricle during diastole. Let us notice the thickness of the ventricular wall. This heart chamber is responsible for pumping blood throughout the body. Using your scissors, let us cut across the left ventricle toward the aorta and continue cutting to expose the valve. There you go. And now that we're done, we can clearly see the exposed valve. Next procedure is we are going to count the 3 flaps or leaflets on this valve. 1, 2, and 3. And these are called as the aortic semilunar valve, leading from the left ventricle into the aorta. It is called a semilunar valve because it has a half-moon shape. And for the last procedure, we are going to examine the aorta, the largest artery. And as you can see, there is a hole here, and this is called as the coronary sinus in the wall of this major artery. This leads into the coronary artery, which carries blood to and nourishes the heart muscle itself. This is the overview of the dissected pig heart for today. Isn't it beautiful? Now we're done with pig's heart dissection, and I hope you learned from this and you enjoyed watching the video. Thank you!